Salvage isn't an aside, it's a career, with its own mechanic, story tie-ins and universe-shaping endgames. Discover the secrets of the ancient Hadesians, locate valuable components and cargo, or go down in history as the first to make contact with an entirely new alien race.
The live teams after we're live.
Yeah, this is going to be great for our salvage mechanic that was added as one of the stretch goals.
That's right, that's right.
Explorers.
You know, I'm looking for, I think that's what I'm going to play, is Salvage.
You got to check out the salvage ship we're working on.
Oh, I think I've seen it. And now they're going to want to know when they get to see it. So what's the answer? Soon.
And we hit $55 million this week.
That is a crazy amount of crowdfunding.
It is a crazy amount of crowdfunding. Did you pick up your reclaimer?
I did. I picked up a reclaimer, a nice big ship. It's selling amazingly well. People are really into the salvage mechanic.
Randy Vasquez, he's working really closely with the concept artist who's putting together the Crucible. And as we talked about before, he's working hand in hand with the salvage mechanic. So that's all coming together.
So we have, like, you know, claws kind of to hold things in shape. We have tools and equipment all around the bay. These bays will kind of open up into space so that way stuff can come from outside.
Oh, cool. We'll need a way to move, you know, salvagers at a good pace of speed from point A to point B. Now, Randy's initial idea was a human catapult.
Everybody loves human catapults.
Yeah.
And this is also where a lot of good direction from management, such as Chris or Ben, also comes into play. So when we release a feature or a ship thematically, for example, if we wanted to do a salvage feature, ideally we want to have content for players to be able to take advantage of that. So you know, a salvage-specific ship would be a good example of releasing when we release the salvage mechanic.
None of these things are coincidental. When we do decide to create a ship and then decide a release date for it, we need to ensure that the systems that are unique to that ship actually exist, are designed out and are implemented from code and tech design, so that those systems are in play by the time the ship is actually created.
And we may not see that until we're focused more on the PU. Right now we're obviously all on Squadron 42 and the ships that are involved in Squadron 42, and mostly so our attention is there, but when we get to just pure PU stuff, then that's really where the salvage and repair and all that stuff will be tuned to be fun.
The second set of occupations that we're going to add is going to be mining and salvage. We won't have the dedicated ships necessary for these things until sometime next year, but I'm really anxious to widen the scope of what you can do within the game. And so we're going to be adding some more labor-intensive, up-close and personal variations on these jobs. On the salvage side, a salvage gun will allow you to strip surface materials from a ship. If you know where the most valuable areas are on the different types of ships, then you'll be able to make a pretty good living doing this.
The next one up would be 3.2 with repair and salvage. So we'll be able to salvage and repair. So I would say that our cadence on releases, which is what you've seen in the last few releases, is probably going to be something like 2 to 3 months between releases. So just to give expectations, because I don't want to go through 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4, and everyone goes, okay, we're going to get that in 4 months.
And there's also a lot of salvage to be had in the area because of how long the military operated here, though they cleaned up a lot of their...
The writers do really nice fiction stuff, but a lot of that fiction stuff is specifically seeding what we want to do long term. So don't just view it as fiction. It is highlighting where the game will go.
All right. Will the outpost be salvageable?
I want them to be.
I want to as well.
Well, to me, it's basically like cleaning up extra stuff. So if somebody wants to abandon it, somebody wants to attack it, take it down, burn it, and then you go in and you salvage it, I think that should be doable.
It has a giant claw underneath that's got lasers on, and it cuts up the material and all gets sucked in through a vacuum inside, which can then get processed. It's got a drone bay at the top of it, so it's got these hatches that will open out, and you just have player controlled drones that will fly out from there, which can then go to help salvage parts of the ships.
There's basically 5 different phases to it. There would be the hull phase, or the stripping of it. Then there's the mulching of the ship. There's item extraction. There's data extraction, and then there's possible siphoning. So whether that be air or gas, we will be focusing on the hull stripping first, and then from there, start working through those other facets of gameplay.
Yeah, I think this is something worth mentioning. Most of these things now are reaching their tier 0 and they'll go live. And once they go live, there'll be so much to build upon that, because we're trying to keep all our systems open-ended, so there's more to come always.
For Salvage, you will locate derelicts and you'll scan it and you'll find out what metals it's made up of and how I can use this to strip it for parts.
It's the big industrial salvage ship that could, with a reinforced cargo bay, long-range jump drive, tractor beams, unmanned drones, floodlights, and more. Let's check in.
And the Reclaimer will allow for new career and mission options, with salvage mechanics planned to come online later this year.
Check out those features and others planned for Star Citizen on our live roadmap, which you can access on the RSI website. As we get closer to the end of the quarter, you'll notice many features for Alpha 3.1 have been completed and are now being polished, while others are nearing the end of their development stages, like the vehicles covered in ShipShape.
Yes, and one of the other ships that you saw making its way through the pipeline is
the Drake Vulture promotion will begin for all backers tomorrow, June 15th, and will be your entry point to an exciting career in the universe of salvaging.
Then it's salvage charges to break apart the hull more.
So essentially the ship cuts up the panels of the wrecks, it drags them in while processing, and then it goes into the second processing stage inside of the ship.
I just want to make sure that we're realistic for the continuing professions on 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, etc. So.
But after that, you start work on salvaging, and salvaging is currently scheduled for an early 2019 release, if I remember the roadmap right now. I don't have it directly in front of me. All right, cool.
And so I included a video. It's from a couple years ago, just to kind of illustrate the concept. And basically, this is just the damage texture, which is very, the same basic tech that we're going to use to extract it. So you could think of it as
salvage gameplay, not currently in Star Citizen, but on the roadmap for next year. So, and all right.
With salvage on the roadmap for the end of the year, what do we expect the initial rollout to look like as far as gameplay goes, and what technical hurdles do we have to overcome before we can start seeing some of the systems in the Reclaimer come online?
In terms of any tech limitations on the ship stuff, I'm not sure of any.
The way that we generate these debris entities when a ship gets destroyed, it doesn't have any of the pipe connections or persistent information. Those object containers just have a collection of entities, brushes, and all sorts of things. We want those things to remain when a ship turns into a debris piece, but there's some technical limitations on why they don't.
We're going to be adding, obviously, more loops. I think next up we've got sort of fueling, refueling, fuel collection. Then it'll be salvage, more content, obviously, and then open up a bit. We'll see what happens.
Do we want to release the components, aspect first, or do we want to, release hull scraping, with the components, and say that is salvage as a whole?
It's the kind of like the first version of salvage that we're actually doing. So what we're calling it internally is it's more like hull stripping. It's a system that's been looming for a long time, and this is the starting point for it. Obviously, it expands out when we start looking at ship salvage. There'll be similar systems there where you might be able to use, hull scraping lasers to take that stuff off. But then there's things like the Reclaimer with the claw, and you just kind of progress from what we're doing down here all the way up to that. So yeah, this is a really good starting point, for us to just start, noodling around with, playing with.
For the very first implementation, it will be a very generic material that is just kind of like munging everything off the ship that you're taking off it, that you're stripping away. The next iteration actually of hand salvage will be to start stripping individual materials from ships. Further down the line, obviously, we're going to build on that for the ships, which is kind of like the cutting off parts and taking those on and cutting away and using the muncher that we've got on the Reclaimer, for example. That will be coming down the line as well.
Hull scraping isn't just the first version of salvage gameplay coming to Star Citizen. It's the feature necessary to finally bring the upcoming Drake Vulture to the persistent universe. Let's check it out now
and see what it looks like very close to its final form.
If you really want to try something different, something new, something that hasn't been in Star Citizen before, the Vulture is going to be where you want to go.
Talking of Salvage, that's one of those things that is somebody else's baby and feature, has a massive impact on all of our ships. All of their damage and underlying damage messages were created for a damage feature that was worked on many years ago.
The ships we made several years ago, they're not necessarily going to be fully compatible with these new features we drop. Yeah. So, that is tech debt.
Salvage work that necessitated all this was built off the damage system which we introduced with the Gladius.
So a long time ago.
2015,
2016. Yeah. And that system hasn't really changed since then.
That brings us to now, and the impending release of Alpha 3.18, which will add a whole lot more to this 2022 of Star Citizen highlights, including hull stripping salvage gameplay. Yes?
While we're close, we've determined this will require a bit more time. Our current target is to open Alpha 3.18 on the PTU to all testers this week. We'll then come back strong after the holidays and work to release to the live servers in January.
Why does it look so boring? It's 'cause it is this boring. This is watch movie content, This is watch a movie gameplay. It's not even mining. Because mining has more of a need to be attentive than this does. I would like to see a way to fail. Maybe add a little bit of skill to it.